And go ahead and call to order this Kerrville City Council workshop for April 28th, 2025. Do we have anybody signed up for comments?
No, sir.
Ma'am, we're going to move on to item 2A, Kerr Together update. Mr. Whitson. He was here earlier. Well,
Kara, do you want to kick yours? Yeah, if you want to kick yours off, if the mayor's good with that.
with me, please. Please, of course.
Sorry, I'll show up William a little. Oh, wow, Martin was pretty zippy on that. Well, good afternoon, Mayor, Council members. I'm Tara Bushnell with Upper Guadalupe River Authority. I was here in February to give an update on the flood warning system, and so we've accomplished a lot since then, and so just wanted to come back and give some more updates now. I'm going to concentrate on 4 main areas, starting with the working group activities. So the Guadalupe River Flood Warning System Working Group, which is organized under Kerr Together, continues to meet regularly, about once a month now, and we have been focusing on various topics with the system development, defined the vision for the comprehensive system, and that we'll be implementing it in phases. So the working group continues to be a vital partner for communication and for feedback and input, and your team members from City of Kerrville have been active and very invaluable participants in the working group. So for telecommunications, KPUB and LCRA's grant application to the Texas Broadband Office for the middle mile funding, as you know, is approved, and LCRA has begun to implement building the infrastructure for the private LTE network that the sirens and the future rain gauges and water level gauges are going to communicate on. So their progress to date, they have built the new Hunt Tower, and they have now, I just got an update since I sent the slides, that they have 4 signed co-location agreements. So it's a combination of new towers, and then can they put their hardware on existing towers. So they need to get the agreements for them. And they have already ordered the long lead time materials to get those here faster. So because the state funding that's currently available is directed from the Texas Water Development Board specifically for counties to implement an outdoor flood warning system that includes sirens, Kerr County and UGRA have entered into an interlocal agreement for UGRA to implement the flood warning systems according to that grant. As you know, we're a small team at UGRA, and so we needed to add to our bench a bit through these wonderful partners. And I just wanted to say first, Kerr Together continues to be a wonderful partner to UGRA. William Whitson and Kim Fouts have been a huge asset to me. They're my constant phone friend, and they've helped to ensure that the process moves as quickly as we can, but also diligently and with transparency. We also selected GrantWorks to help us manage that Water Development Board SB3 grant to ensure that those project plans are submitted and we can get that funding moving to Kerr County and then to UGRA. And West Consultants is our prime engineering consultant to implement the system. Through West, we have several sub-consultants who've added expertise in key areas like predictive modeling, civil engineering, outreach, and education, as well as on the equipment itself. So I'm going to share the next specific updates that are related to the initial phase that's focused on sirens, but I just wanted to communicate that the comprehensive system is still the goal and the big picture. So we will have a system that's built on a robust data collection platform that's going to, then a network that is going to assimilate all of that data that's coming in. And then sirens are one of the several public notification tools that are going to be used. So we've accelerated the tasks for the initial siren installation in order to meet the expectations that the Water Development Board has for the SB3 program that's focused on those. So as soon as we got the West Consultant team on board, we asked them to support us with an initial purchase of sirens. UGRA selected Federal Signal sirens with installation and coordination by OmniWarn. So the sirens have been delivered, and the install phase is underway. It's focused on that the sirens broadcast to areas where Kerr County youth camps are located in western Kerr County. And that was the focus for the initial phase because those camps are located next to water bodies. They have a short response time between when it starts to rain and then when the river increases. Also because of the number of people they serve and the timing of their operations. And going up on private property for the location of the sirens was preferable because the right-of-way along the roads of 1340 and 39 are in the floodplain. And the electronics of the sirens have to be, according to our Development Board's rules, elevated above the 500-year floodplain. And then there's additional installation considerations in the floodplain. So for all of those reasons, we have been trying to work through the installation being on private property for the initial phase. And also location to electricity, because they have to have two forms of power. Electricity, and ours are gonna have electricity as the primary AC power, and then solar as the secondary. So these are our sirens at the facility where they were manufactured in Illinois before they shipped. So another initial phase priority is the release of the public data viewer. This has been used by our emergency managers for the last couple of months, and we've gotten their feedback to make changes before we release it publicly on UGRA's website. It's going to have rainfall, past, current, future, as well as water level, current, and for some of those locations that have forecast points, it'll also have future water level. We'll be sharing information with the public for engagement and understanding of this resource. That's a key step. So other just minor updates, we're working to developing first with Kerr County operation and maintenance agreements to outline how specifically the infrastructure that's implemented through this first part of the grant is going to be used. A great update is that we have a new USGS gauge in Kerr County. It's online at Lynx Haven Crossing on the South Fork, and they accelerated the installation of that. The UGRA board funded the installation. We've also asked our consultant team to start with predictive modeling, and then we'll be working towards adding to their scope for additional gauges to be placed. So we had a great meeting last week that William organized at KPUB that brought in all of those project partners to provide updates, and happy to answer any questions.
First off, thank you for your hard work and the group, your group's hard work.
Thank you.
I don't think the public's going to feel safe until they have redundant ways to know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And the sirens are one thing, but you also have, will have predictive models, you'll have stream flow models, you'll have rain models available online to the public, which I think is critical. That information will not only be for the public, but it'll be for our emergency management coordinators, both of the city and the county, and other personnel who need to know what to expect. Because that morning, we did not know.
Mm-hmm. And as we add more equipment on, that's also going to be additional data points that National Weather Service has too.
I want to say a personal thank you for your hard work. You tackled it, and I appreciate it. I saw you not long after your trip to Austin, which was almost as unfortunate as the events today. And so, man, you've come along. I mean, you just kept going. You didn't stop, so thank you very much.
A lot of work to do. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You bet. Any questions for Ms. Bushnell?
Just a random one. You said that you had to put these sirens on private property above the floodplain, or the 500-year floodplain. What was the process to get those installed on private property? Did you get any pushback, or did you have to pay a fee to the landowners? How did that go?
They're not installed yet. Since this is public infrastructure on private property, we do have an easement. So they had to grant an easement to UGRA.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
And
good.
we've had good cooperation so far, but we're still finalizing all of those agreements.
Okay.
And they didn't have to go on private property. That was a more direct path forward.
But you weren't met with a bunch of resistance from private property owners? Okay, just curious.
Okay.
Sarah, just for the public and everybody else, what is going to trigger those alarms to go off?
It'll be a kind of a phased approach for how those triggers are worked in. So we work with the information that we have right now available, and then as we get the predictive modeling come in, then that will add it to be more robust. But it'll be information, and then there's an action plan associated with when this information is present, then these actions take place. So it'll be defined.
So it just won't be a random go off? Okay.
No.
I just have one quick question. The sirens themselves, I heard that thunder and lightning made it very loud that morning. So can you give me an example of why you might not hear it, if there is one, and hopefully that never happens, but.
So again, because they're one of the many different notification tools, and they are used primarily for people that are outdoors or that are not in a brick house, not in your house that's up way far away. So I mean, there's 70 decibels is the volume that they need to propagate up to the full range, which can be up to 2 miles. Yes.
I kind of think of an airplane.
Uh-huh.
If you were on the tarmac when it revs its engines up, would it be that loud?
I need to find out what is comparable to, it's 90 to 70 decibels, but
I
I
don't
can
know
find that
what
out
that
and let
means
you know.
personally, but I'd be curious to
I'm gonna-
know.
Yeah. Yes, it's tone and voice.
Okay.
I'm
So
gonna-
a tone and then instructions.
I'm gonna kind of throw this at the chief because he's over here, but what's a standard siren on one of your patrol units? Isn't that like 114 decibels, or do you know? Okay. I'm just,
We're learning so much
Well,
these days.
70 to me is not that loud.
Mhm. That's what the outer range is, yeah.
Okay.
We were really kind of hoping you'd impersonate what the sound like.
No, sir.
Demonstration.
Let us know before you do that too.
Yes.
In addition to the sirens, I'm sure there's going to be education about if guests are at a cabin and they need to know what to do if they hear the siren. Is that part of the plan as well?
Absolutely. It has to be part of what does this sound mean, for sure, and what is the action that should be taken, yes. That's why we've front-loaded a lot of the public outreach and education tasks, which you'll see really kick off intensely next month in May, because we can't have the equipment out there without their good communication on what it means.
Good. Thank you. Again, thank you for all your work. I
right.
appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Tara.
Thank you.
Mr. Whitson.
100 to 120 decibels.
Thank you.
You just beat me. Fast fingers.
Mr. Whitson, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor and members of council and everyone else here. Glad to be back and share with you again just a broader overview of what we're doing with the long-term recovery operation. The flood warning system is a key piece of it. It's probably our #1 priority. And I've been supporting Tara and her staff, and what an amazing job she has done. She has run fast, and I've tried to keep up. So that's where we are with that. As you know, our long-term recovery operation is targeting each of the disaster damage elements, the flood warning, the river, healing of the river, housing, economic development. So we're all over the board comprehensively. And we are actually partnering with Schreiner University to actually write this stuff down and record it for history. In fact, we may be getting an intern later this summer to assist with that. So a lot of activity going on, and we're building it and flying the plane too. So, next slide. Oh, I got it here. Okay, got it. Just a quick overview. With all of those activities, economic development, healing the river, the flood warning system, business assistance, on and on, all the categories, you're looking at probably a little over 200 projects. Infrastructure breaks down to be 47, business assistance 11, river, it just kind of goes on and on. We've been working, we actually have a committee with emergency response. And so what we're trying to do is document what has been done and what is being done and what we're planning for the future. So that's what the 200 projects involved. It's a lot of moving parts. This is just kind of a quick representation of what we consider to be the price tag of recovery. A lot of people have, commented about the donations that have come into the Community Foundation, and they were awesome. And they are doing a great job partnering with us. But as you can see, whatever they've collected, it's not nearly enough. So our job, like I said, is to go and document what is it that needs to be done, what has been done, and what we need to do. And this is our current kind of snapshot in time of what that looks like. You're looking at around 102 million plus raised thus far. If you do the math, that leaves you about 170 million short, and we're working hard on that, part of which is some of the additional funding on the presentation you just received from flood warning. And that's on the top of my radar, and we're going to get every penny out of the state of Texas if I have anything to say about it. The match required for some of the grants we've put in, some of the grants that we're planning for, that's also in those figures of 11 million. And we've been pretty successful in raising match funds for projects we've seen so far. One of the things I've been asked to comment on specifically, because it's kind of brand new, we're doing several things on the strategy for healing the river. Some of you all participated, I believe, in the seed distribution to stabilize the banks and those kinds of things, the planting of the sedges and all of those kinds of things. But then we're also doing the tree initiative. The Community Foundation announced a wonderful grant towards the San Antonio Botanical Gardens initiative that we've kind of incorporated into the plan. The goal being to plant over 50,000 trees, native trees, back into the riverine system, which is an incredible goal and I think a legacy project, and one that I'm really excited and want to push hard for. Initially, when we started that effort in the fall, their target was to collect 100,000 seeds, native seeds, so that they could grow the trees that go back into the river system. They collected over 800,000. Those seeds have been carefully documented, put to safe places, and are in their process to go out to nurseries to begin growing the trees. And there'll be calls for volunteers, and but you have to be trained to go out into the river system soon to begin planting those trees. It's probably a 3 to 5 year effort, but what an amazing effort that will be. So that's just two of the items. The third item is we're initiating dive teams to go in to get the smaller debris that needs to be removed, so that if people are wanting to go swimming, the local population, our visitors, they don't have to worry about the safety of the river. We want to make it safer. It's a wild river. It can never be 100% eliminated of risk, but we're going to do our very best to step up and make sure that that concern is mitigated as best we can. HEB, go shopping at HEB, please. I know I do. They have contributed major way to this. And right now they've contributed close to $150,000 to initiate this effort. We're excited about it. It officially kicked off on Friday with a briefing. We're going to continue weekly coordination meetings. We are working with the state of Texas, the Department of Emergency Management, and I have to give a shout out to your department director, Jay Brimhall. He's off the chart awesome. Where is he? He's not here.
Where is he when you need him?
Okay, well, I'll send a
Needs
check
to
in the
hear
mail.
that.
But anyway, he has done a great job in collaborating with these groups, with planning out, okay, where are the target areas, where are the swim areas, what do we need to focus on, all of those kinds of things. And then I've been doing the collaboration with TETM, and we're going to bring that together with these really volunteer dive groups. What we're doing is we're paying some of their hourly rates, but mostly it's fuel. If they they were concerned, like if they go out and dive and they rip their suit, how do they get a new one? We're going to be doing those kind of things as part of that's what part of the funding is going for. And it's exciting. The two groups are San Antonio Search and Support. You may have seen them already working in Louise Hayes Park and the Shriner Park, and then Rampart Vigilance. The idea of adding the second group, Rampart Vigilance, is to double our efforts. So there's just so much that you can do. And of course, I'm not volunteering, but they tell me when they go down there that it's pretty dark and murky down there, and you can only go so fast. I mean, and so there's this scientific search method. There's a grid and a search pattern they have to operate by. So we want to make sure that they spend as much time in the water as they can. And if they need, their suit replaced or something, it gets torn or worn, they need fuel to come back and forth from San Antonio. Is the fire chief here? All right, kudos for him. He said that we could, because it takes a long time to go back and forth to air up the oxygen tanks, they have a place where they can do that. And he said, yeah, just let them know and we'll coordinate that. So the city has just stepped up in many ways. The debris retrieval, that's all been planned out as well. And so we're very excited about the dive effort. It's kicked off, and we're going to have these weekly coordination meetings, and we're going to even collaborate with TDM to make sure that the protocols for doing the search for the missing victims is continuing to be followed. If they happen to find something, that's not our mission. We're there looking for, debris in the water and things like that. But if we happen to run into an area or a need to collaborate, we have those connections made right up front. First year anniversary. This is something I know is near and dear to your heart, Mayor, and the rest of the council and the community. And as your long-term recovery consultant, it is my advice and my experience that the first year anniversary of any disaster, no matter what it is extremely significant. Handle it with care. Make sure that you balance the respect to those who have lost their lives with those who have to continue on and move forward. And so there's some recommendations floating around. We have a special committee that is focused on this issue in particular. One of the things that we want to start, which is going to be happening within days, they're already prepping the website now, is to put together a common calendar so that people understand what kind of events are being planned, whether they're, a rock concert or something more mindful or worshipful or reflexive, so that way people understand what's happening around them. They understand where to go if they're interested in a particular event versus another one. And we're going to be staffing this and working this up, and it'll be live on our website so that people can have access to that type of information. And that is my short and sweet report. I'll be glad to answer any questions. I see Mr. Bach is here. Any of the hard questions I'll throw to him. I'll take all the softballs.
In regards to the anniversary,
Yes, sir.
as we've discussed, I think a lot of the community want an arc. They want to remember, but it's also our nation's 250th.
Correct.
So we want to celebrate togetherness as a community, while also remembering.
Right. We want a balance there. Absolutely.
And when that website is up, how will we know? Could you email
I
me?
will notify everyone. Yes, sir.
That would be real important, I think, for the public especially, and for those who are trying to plan events.
Yes, sir.
It's not just, hey, I'm going to have an event. You also have to have, do you have security? Do you have restrooms? Do you have, what, has it planned? Is it
Yeah.
safe? Because
That's
we don't want an event that's not safe.
Exactly.
Right.
And I know that a lot of the burden will fall on the police and fire operations here and in the county. Having been a former manager myself and seen this play many times, we have to spread those resources out and plan for them and take care of each other.
Mm-hmm. Questions or comments from Mr. Whitson?
Just a question. Did you, maybe I missed it, did you say how long you were expecting the dive teams to be here?
Well, right now we have funding, I didn't mention that, so let me just dwell on that a little bit. We have funding, the contracts that we have signed are for 90 days. Um, Can they get everything done in 90 days? We don't know, but we felt like that was a good start. And if we need more resources, we are beginning to talk with people to see if we can gather those resources. Certainly would welcome them. If people want to contribute or donate, we'll figure out how to do that. But right now, we have a good running start, and 90 day, the contracts are 90 days.
Ms. Siegerman?
Calls for your funds needed to do everything 100%. I was talking to Dalton yesterday about Louise Hayes Park in particular, and I wonder if I knew more about what exactly is at the top of that list where we haven't been able to cover it yet and or repair it or whatever. If I knew what it was, sometimes it helps me think about who is a logical donor for this, or if it's something that has to do with youth, or I can't think of another example, but Louise Hayes Park is something I think of that youth need and use. So I reached out to some foundations that I know that specifically that mission statement is for that. So is there a way to get a list of what's not been actually done yet?
Yes, ma'am, there is, but I would like to ask if you could get together with me, because we're doing the very same thing.
Okay,
We've thought we were on the same page here, and we have some folks we were going to talk to
okay,
and have been talking to, because we do understand that when you do complicated recovery operations, sometimes deltas and gaps come up, and it's the timing of when you bring those funds together that's kind of the art of the deal.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'd love to meet with
Okay.
you. Your staff has been tremendous, and yes, we have all those numbers.
Greg was talking
Thank
about it this
you.
morning.
Mr. McKinney?
Oh, I would just say that we're really blessed to have you here, William, and helping, of course, Tara, QGRA, and Todd, and the whole long-term recovery group is doing a fabulous job, I think. So we need to be grateful for that every day.
Thank you so much. It's been my joy. Not that I was called to come and because of the reason, but I've certainly enjoyed engaging with the community. You guys are amazing. Your volunteers are off the chart. I've never worked with volunteers as talented and dedicated as I've met here, so it has been my joy. Thank you.
Jeff?
I was gonna say something, but it might not be the appropriate time with it, but there's an organization here that, well, every year on the 4th of July, we celebrate. This year is a huge celebration because it is our 250th, but it's also the 1-year anniversary. The organization is the one that puts on the performance down in the park. And a couple of the board members with the Arcadia reached out and said, our stage is there. So I've already reached out to Bill Blackburn about this.
Good.
Take it away from the city doing it, because we don't want, if one religious group does something or the city puts it on,
Of course.
But Bill Blackburn and David Payne are getting together because the Arcadia offered the stage that's going to be used for the concert that evening
Right.
for a morning celebration of life and a vigil for those that lost their lives. And I wanted to say thank you to the board for that, because Larry, y'all didn't have to do that, but y'all did. Y'all brought up the fact about bathrooms being in place. They're there. So anyway,
That's true, that's a good point.
I think that's a very appropriate comment. I really appreciate that. This year's different. This year's different.
just
And the
shows.
whole world's going to be watching how you walk this balance. And our groups have already been thinking about it, and we have some suggestions. And cross our fingers and toes, we may even have some donors that would back our vision and make this a 4th of July to remember in a positive way.
Just another way to show how our community comes together and does things.
Absolutely.
I would also recommend, if you, unfortunately, talk to the Chamber of Commerce about their leadership class, because they were the first ones to host Easter Fest or an event at Flat Rock Park. And there was a lot of negativity and press. So at least reach out to them and say, hey, how'd y'all handle this? Because it was,
Or what'd you learn from it?
yeah, because that was the first one, and now we're gonna have something on the anniversaries.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
all
you.
about lessons learned, and I think that's a good suggestion.
Any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Whitson.
Thank you.
Todd, do you have anything for us? Thank you. We do appreciate you, Mr. Whitson and your group. And Todd, I say it every time I see you, but I'm so thankful you're doing what you're doing. Thank you. You and Kelly and y'all are doing wonderful things, so thank you. All right, moving on to 2B, stormwater drainage fee. Mr. Barrera.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Thank you for your time this afternoon. We'll circle back to the stormwater master plan. Okay, so stormwater drainage master plan update and then the potential stormwater utility fee. We'll kind of tackle these hand in hand. So this all stems from the actual master plan. I know at the last presentation, there was some questions about the master plan itself. So I wanted to touch on that a little bit as we transition over to the fee structure we're proposing. So starting out with the master plan, first drainage plan for Kerrville 2020. As you see here, it's an overview of the drainage system throughout the city, along with the varying basins around town. And then to evaluate, rank some problem areas. So we ranked 13 areas that were identified in the plan for improvements. And also the important thing here, which is a segue to the next section, is going to be the identify reliable and consistent funding that's sustainable, both for ongoing maintenance and potential future CIP projects, and also to provide a roadmap for implementation. So viewing it from a maps perspective, these are all the projects which you'll see they're scattered throughout town and associated with different basins, as you see here. So that's just a snapshot of the different projects throughout town. And together here is a summary of it, or a table, if you will, of all the projects that were identified. So the ones in red, we've already addressed them. Take It Easy Drain, that one's been taken care of. The next one after that's going to be the Lois Woodlawn to Ox area. That one we're going to hold off and wait until TxDOT does their project, which they're going to start here soon. We'll see how that impacts the overall drainage in that area. So we may not have to do extensive work to Lois, so which will help us out with that project. It's a small project, but nonetheless, it's one we may be able to take off the list. The other one is Hill Country Drive. You know, that one we did phase 1, which is just reprofiling the road. But there is another project that is definitely in need of help with that, with the flooding there in that area. The bottom 3, those are Park Street, First Street, and 4th Street. Those are mainly the low water crossings. So it was recommended that we install some kind of mechanical system on there, but we decided to do some stuff in-house and install some different signals, which we're feeling they're working, so they're helping mitigate that that risk. But the other ones that remain are unfunded. So I believe we have about $15 million worth of projects here. However, that's in 2020 dollars. We're thinking maybe 20-30% in 30. So again, I want to keep it in 2020 dollars because that's what the plan has. Just keep it consistent there. But nonetheless, they're going to be a lot more expensive than what we have here. And you'll see the pictures on the right side. Is the top one is Take It Easy, and then the bottom was going to be the Spring Street outfall. All right, as we discussed the last presentation, we do have some ongoing maintenance that city staff does conduct. We're able to capture work orders, but the most important thing here is capturing the hours, which is the second column on the right. We capture all the hours annually to see how much time is spent towards drainage, in addition to all the other tasks that the Streets Division is responsible for. But some pictures here, we got some starting from the left to the right. We're always having to clean these drainage channels after some heavy rains. We have some equipment out there to remove debris. Well, the middle one, we're regrading some areas, and then the last one there is just backfilling some areas that get washed out. So all of those you'll see on the expenses right now, both on the, some of the hard costs as well as some salaries hourly that we kind of compile based off the hours we spend. Make sure that we are, okay. So That kind of lands us here where we retain NewGen to assist with the rate study and recommendations, creating that data set to develop that ERU, which is the equivalent residential unit, and also to provide different fee scenarios that our staff has evaluated, and ultimately want to get to a structure that's equitable for both the commercial side, multi-unit, and the single residential families. So also to provide a benchmarking of comparable communities. Now, this was important just to understand that there are some other methodologies in place from other cities. However, I didn't want to get hung up on comparing the actual rates. We know what needs we have here in Kerrville. They differ from Fredericksburg, Bernie, Bandera, whatever it may be, but nonetheless, they do have a funding mechanism in place. So right now is our current fee structure. It's set up very basic. It was implemented in 2022 just to help offset some expenses that we have ongoing with our streets division. How it's based right now is just flat rate. Residential is $1, multi-unit 2, commercial 3. What that generates on the revenue side is about $156,600. However, when you compare that to some expenses we've compiled, that puts us on paper at a deficit of about $110,000. And we'll go over the expenses right here. So how do we get to the expenses? Again, engineering, public works, admin, that's pretty much based on percentage of time that's spent towards drainage, floodplain management systems, things like that. Also in the second row is going to be the street salaries and maintenance. Those are going to be more of your hard cost. We have about $100,000 in supplies, material, small tools and equipment, and the rest of it is made up on the salaries from streets division based on the hours that we compile on the work orders. That's how we get to that 227, 812 for street salaries. And then so your total O&M for 26 is estimated at 267,262. Now, that highlighted row, that's assuming we take on different projects and get those taken care of. Once we take on projects, it does bring another level of maintenance. So that's the added cost on there. And the study did use a municipal cost index to project these out to 2031 and beyond. But for here, I just wanted to keep it to the 2031 cap. All right, now some good stuff here. So proposed tiered option. Based on the last presentation, there was some questions, which I'm hoping to address here in this slide. Basically we start off with a $2 starting point. Right, so we break it down into 3 tiers. So your tier 1 is going to be structures that are up to 2,350 square feet. And currently the study showed there's 2,259 homes in this tier. And tier 2, it's that range right there. There's 3,063 homes. And then tier 3, it's anything greater than 4,878. And again, there's 2,266 homes in that tier. So questions were asked about rates, which was very good questions, right? So in FY27, if we begin this structure, the tier 1 we're paying $1.50, and then in FY31 that rate will be $3.64. Right? Follow the same suit down from tier 2 to tier 3. So tier 2 starts at $2, it ends at $4.85 in FY31. Now the middle section there, that's going to be for your multi-unit and commercial. That's where you apply the ERU. That's where that comes into play. So basically, as you get the actual square footage, divide that by our ERU, which is 4,876, and that gives you a certain amount of units. We multiply that times the rate for that year, which will go with $2. And so you'll see an example of a shopping plaza. It's 40,000 square feet. So that pretty much equates to them paying $16.40. Oops, sorry. All right, so moving down to the bottom area here, there are some annual increases that are recommended. So as I mentioned, we'll start off with $2, and then we'll carry on all the way to FY31, which has put us at $4.85. And then down there at the bottom, that last row is going to be some of the revenues that are estimated based on this structure. So this revenue does help us take care of ongoing maintenance expenses and help us build a fund balance to potentially fund some capital projects moving forward. So some next steps. For council's consideration of an ordinance adding an actual stormwater utility fee, which we're hoping to bring that back May 12th and the 26th. And then that'll be followed by a resolution for a long-range rate structure, right? So that we can keep that forecasting and those projections in place. And we'll do that as well on May 26th. And we're looking at proposing this, if approved, on October 1st. There's going to be some outreach components that are going to be happening between now and implementation date. You'll see some bullet points right there as far as, informative videos explaining to the community what this structure is for and what its intentions are. Also some brochures down here from utility customers that walk in, and then updating our website. And there'll be other components that we can add, but nonetheless, we got to have that in place. And then finance will be working on reconfiguring their billing system accordingly. I think that we have a good system of getting that in place. Correct. So that'll happen, and then as well as staff training, which is going to be important. And with that being said, I'll take any questions if we have any.
If we go back to the table, it shows the proposed tiered. There. On multi-unit and commercial, you give as an example a shopping plaza. Is that 40,000 square feet the building or the impermeable surface?
That's the rooftop.
The rooftops?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So some of our commercial buildings are bigger than that.
Correct.
Some of them, not a lot, but some. How will it affect our largest retail firms? I'm thinking H-E-B, Lowe's, Home Depot, possibly the mall. How will it affect them?
Yeah, it's equitable. I haven't did the math on a large. I just based it off of 40,000 square foot. Not sure how large the Home Depot or a Lowe's or an H-E-B is, but it'll follow the same formula as any multi-unit and commercial.
Good. Well, if we're going to talk about that in May, our 2 meetings, I'd like to have that information.
Yes, sir.
It's not hard to get.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Secondly, have you had any outreach with the commercial building owners or?
No, I haven't spoken with
I
any.
mean, we've talked about it several times, but that doesn't mean someone who owns a building has been paying attention.
Right. Yeah, I haven't received any phone calls. I don't know if anybody else has received anything based off. Yeah, as far as myself and our department, we haven't received any inquiries on this.
What we don't want to do is end up with a pricing system that someone suddenly gets a multi-hundred or even a 4-digit monthly bill
Right.
that they're not expecting. And so we haven't even considered a ceiling on this rate, or as we're implementing it, have we?
No, I have not considered a ceiling on this,
Well, let's
but
see what the numbers look like when you
Okay.
find out for our bigger retail.
yeah, we can definitely get a sample of different retail
What about
establishments and see what it
education
looks like.
establishments? Someplace like Shrine University has lots of rooftops. What about them?
They'll still apply. This applies to them as well.
Okay, so they may have a significant monthly fee.
Right.
It might be good to figure out what they're going to be paying too. Okay,
Yeah, we'll definitely get you that before
thank
for
you.
those
I know
readings.
you will. Any questions, comments? We've talked about this a lot.
Went through a lot of agony last time. I think I got past that.
We don't actually have a visitor comment, but come on up and,
Pablo Brinkman, 3928 Oak Park. Was that on the impervious cover or just the rooftop portion?
Right now, we're just going off a rooftop.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, because that's,
Well, that makes
Significant.
but
sense.
that's significant, and then if you look at, I mean, yeah, great.
Yeah.
That's a good question, Mayor.
first time. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Barrera?
Okay, so let me, staff did a calculation, so H-E-B, just rough estimate, be about $40 to $50 a month.
Per month.
Yes, sir. But we'll still compile, get you a
Please,
sample
especially
and
for-
get those presented.
Or other, like Shrine University has lots of roofs.
Right.
We need to know. Anything else? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank
You've
you,
been very
Dave.
patient with us. We appreciate
Oh,
it.
no, thank you. I appreciate that.
Get him again.
Guess I'll stay up here.
Who's
so the
next?
one.
Oh, we got you again. Chapter 110, Code of Ordinances, Mr. Barrera.
All right, so now we'll camp out on 110 for a little bit. Hopefully we'll get this done pretty quickly, but wanted to circle back to this again on updating Chapter 110. So we'll start off with just updating it was an approach to water stewardship and compliance, right, with local plans, state plans or whatnot. The key thing here, it is an item on the 2050 comp plan, right, which is to implement a strong water conservation or additional measures or programs towards conservation. So wanted to start off with that. And before I go any further, Mr. Tots, I want to thank you for sending that summary. You guys received the red line version of what we've done so far. It's very, very complex, a lot of changes in there, but he sent a very nice summary. So I just wanted to touch on some of the important stuff on here, and if you have any questions on what you've seen so far. So if you have seen that red line version, most of the sections are going to have anything that refers, any fees. We're going to just direct them straight to the fee schedule, which council adopts annually. We're also updating and repositioning definitions, minor rewording, so there's quite a bit of that going on. Also redundancies. There's several provisions that are already outlined in different codes. So again, direct them to that specific code. And then especially important thing here is removing sections that are non-existent or they're outdated. Right? We don't practice that. We don't do those. We can't enforce them. So we had to get those removed, which is important. All right, so section 110.33, this is water main extension charges inside the city limits. Again, removing the sections and just directing them to chapter 82, which is our subdivision code. Also requiring developers to design all new water systems and wastewater systems based on our construction specifications, and it's going to be at their expense. And again, we're going to reference the subdivision code on that one. Also on 110.34, service connections, these sections just rewording, removal of fees. So moving on to 35, this is the extensions of utility mains outside city limits. They got to be in accordance with provisions, regulations, other ordinances, and policies. We do have an existing policy that's in place that I'm working with Development Services with Mr. Drew Paxton. I'll make sure that that policy is current. If there's anything that needs to be updated, we'll go ahead and do that and bring it up for to get it approved to get amended. So there is policies that we do have in place. We want to make sure they're up to date. Also, they may require some annexation. And then again, owner shall be responsible for all costs. So there's a lot more stuff in there, but I just wanted to pull some of these out so we can go over them right now and see if we have any questions on these.
So the may require annexation has to do with the policy that says that we won't take, is that all right? I mean, we have a policy not to go with a system outside the city limits.
Yes, there's provisions in there.
That's why you say it may.
Right, for either, they may be required to get annexed.
Well, it would if it's out of city limits.
Yes. And then 110.36 through 53, just several portions removed, and then as well as some additions on that one. 110.54, this pertains to the water wells. We're just adding clarification on requirements and some prohibitions and exemptions. So again, if it's not practical for the city to allow any type of extension of utilities or water, we'll look at that. Key thing here is to make sure it doesn't have any impact to any of our existing infrastructure. It's not adjacent to any kind of water wells we have right now. So that's important there. And then also to adhere to different requirements, the permit requirements. They'll have to adhere to headwaters, their rules, their provisions that they have for any kind of new wells. So that'll also be in effect. And then again, just removing some redundancies on sections that are already covered by law. So they'll have to abide by different permit requirements. 110.57 and 58, that pertains to type 1 reclaimed water. Just clarifying the responsibilities, usage, removal of fees, make sure that both parties understand their responsibilities. If you are a user of or a customer of ours, make sure your pond is kept up to speed, irrigation system, everything you're required under Chapter 210. Make sure that's in place. So
Let me interrupt you just a second. I should have told Ms. Bushnell, Mr. Whitson, Mr. Bach, you do not have to stay for this part if you don't want to. Free to
Now's
go.
now's your chance. And take a water break.
All right. Go ahead, please. I just saw y'all kind of nod off over there. And I was-
So exciting.
We're almost done.
No, it's important. It's just maybe not important to them.
Okay, thank you, Tara. I stayed here for years. I didn't show up late, so I was here when, so, no, Tara and I work well together, so, yeah, no, we're good. All right, moving on to Article 3, Water Management Plan. Conservation is a leading strategy in our long-range plan. So other cities have adopted very similar ordinances, best practices as we look towards conservation, right, making those improvements. So 11093, year-round conservation measures. This is in place regardless of whatever stage we're in. We're always going to have that education and outreach component, updated continuously. Coordinate with local resources on recommended drought-tolerant landscaping. Also recommend best practices on low-impact irrigation systems, which are already governed by Title 30 of the Texas Administrative Code. Right? So all those already have rules. We just want to make sure that we are enforcing them. Right? So different spray heads, they're required if they're being placed on any kind of development. And 11094, that's our year-round prohibited uses of water, right? So our wasting of water. Again, year-round, any stage that we're in, this applies to it. So water not running more than 10 feet away from intended areas. Failing to make repairs to your system components. Also watering impermeable surfaces. Right? So make sure the spray head's not watering the street, driveway, your sidewalk. Just do some adjustments on there. So very basic measures here. The last one here is the water conservation stages defined. All right, so here's what I'm proposing. Stage 1, it's going to be mild. Stage 2, moderate. Stage 3, severe. 4 is critical. And lastly is water emergency, stage 5. I hope we never get there, but it's broken down right here. We'll start stage 1 all the way to stage 5. We've already identified the times on here, which stay consistent with what they have been. We may have increased an hour just to make things consistent with the starting times, such as stage 1 and stage 2. We moved those to, I think the only change would have been the top part as far as 7 p.m. starting point. So, but pretty straightforward. That's what we're recommending. And again, this will be up for next month for first and second reading.
Mr. McKinney, what did you think about that chart? They did listen to you.
They did, I'm very impressed.
Trying to keep it simple.
Nobody else has lately.
Thank you.
So, no, I do, I like very much that you got stage 1, or not calling them drought stages.
No, conservation stages.
Better.
Right, and so, one thought, the stage 1 is really normal. This is what happened, this is what has always happened, it's normal. This is no dry issues, it's a normal stage, this is just our normal. Anyway,
Other normal.
I listened to you because I knew you said that. All right. Any comments or concerns or questions about these revisions to chapter 110? Anybody? Please, go ahead.
On the development section, I forgot what 110 it was, but I read it so quickly, I was trying to find it on my report. Is there a scope of what defines development? And how much would that add to a developer's cost to develop a parcel? Just kind of some of the questions I know people will ask me, and I just couldn't find it on my computer, or I couldn't read it fast enough.
Right. So as far as any costs, there's going to be some studies that are going to be needed, such as if you want to bring a property in, we want to know what type of water you're bringing, what type of water rights. So
Right.
if you have, like, I'm just going to put a number out there, 10 million gallons, right, allocated based on the footprint, what is your development going to demand? We want to make sure that we're not in the negative.
Did it say that they would have to provide their own water?
Yes, that is Yes, that is a requirement that we're looking at on another section.
Okay, because I see that as a hurdle. Anyway, the other question I had was recommending best practices. Do you find recommending and not having some type of enforcement or fines, does that work?
We discussed that as far as how do you have like a requirement versus a recommendation. I think I'd like a recommendation. I think as new developers coming in, I think they already have that mindset of having low impact on your water,
Right,
just based on them developing in other communities.
right.
They're a lot worse than what we are here. So I think that's already common practice coming into Kerrville, but we want to emphasize that that's important for us. I think before we start requiring, if we can work with these developers and get some best practices in place, I think we can make things happen.
I know architecturally, when we've recommended certain looks, they haven't paid attention to it. So sometimes, you know, you're right, they come in with their plans already made. So, well, good, keep us posted. If that's not working, then probably we need to look at something else, a different way of accomplishing that.
Yes, ma'am.
Good points, thank you. Any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Barrero.
All right, thank you.
Barrero. Item 2D, updating Chapter 16. Mr. Paxton.
You got one more chance. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. You'd asked for another workshop on the zoning code update so we could dive into some of these topics in a little more detail. Again, it is a comprehensive plan implementation item to make sure our codes are up to speed with current initiatives and not impediments to development. Rearrange these a little bit so we can hit the heavy topics first and then go through any remaining questions we have. So we talked about the additional land uses and the changes to the land use table, battery energy storage systems and the data centers. And then we talked about briefly with pet supply and pet grooming and general retail. Council had talked about at the last meeting not allowing battery energy storage systems and data centers. After discussion among staff, staff still recommends we set it as a conditional use permit. If we don't list it in the land use table, then it's a conditional use in any district. And at least this way we can restrict it to conditional use in industrial district only. And then I'll go through the supplemental requirements for those as well. So the last time we met, we talked about prohibiting them within 100 feet of a 100-year floodplain. Sorry, the battery energy storage systems and data centers. Conditional use permit required within 500 feet of a 100-year floodplain or 1,000 feet of Nimitz Lake. Additional requirements recommending a prohibition within 300 feet of any residentially zoned area, public park or playground, public or private school, and hospital. And the reason for that setback is both noise and any environmental issues that may be caused by those uses, should there be any issues. Require a 300-foot setback from any major or minor arterial roadway, but they must have at least one access to an arterial roadway. That way you don't have some of these very large buildings on the street front of our major thoroughfares. So they at least are set back from the thoroughfare to allow for some commercial development, more or less to screen them from the main roadway. Require an 8-foot masonry screening wall on all sides of the property, and work on a water usage agreement and capacity analysis must be completed prior to the issuance of any related permit. And so some of these are pulled from different cities across the state. As they are a relatively new use, relatively new regulations, there's not a lot of consistency. Most cities that have regulations for both uses, they are not the same. So we can talk about if we want to separate those or keep them similar. The battery energy storage system across the state is becoming a little more consistent on what they're regulating based on fire safety, visibility, and water usage. The data centers, the bigger concern is actually noise from any backup generators and water usage for those. So compiling those that I found across the state, kind of came up with this list here. Be happy to discuss those now or later.
Let's go ahead and discuss them now. On a conditional use permit, say we actually had an applicant, met the requirements, went through P and Z, I suppose, got their conditional use permit, it came up to us. How could we deny it?
So I typically relate a conditional use permit as kind of a three-part question. Does this use make sense in this location, yes or no? If not, what are the concerns and are there conditions that we can put on those concerns to mitigate those concerns? And if there are still concerns that we cannot create conditions to mitigate the problems, then you would deny it.
Because I lived through the short-term rental summer,
Correct.
fall. When those things came up to us, even if every neighbor in the neighborhood said they didn't want it, we really didn't have a lot of choice but to approve it.
Right.
And while I'm not hearing rumors of either a BESS system or a data center coming to Kerr County or Kerrville, especially Kerrville, I want the ordinance to be written in such a way that the council still has the authority to say no.
Okay.
And I didn't feel like we had that during the short-term rental
Right.
discussion. Have you seen any, as you studied other cities and communities, had you seen anything in their ordinance that allowed future councils to say no?
No, most of them were using a conditional use permit or a special use permit, depending upon the wording in their zoning. The setback from those protected uses ranged from 200 to 1,000 feet for the residential areas, public spaces, and hospitals, and so on. So I think that would be another thing that we could look at as a larger setback, if that's a bigger concern. The only other thing I can think of, the Zoning Board of Adjustment does have authority for a special exception, but those would not come to council. That would just go to the Board of Adjustment. But we could set that criteria very specifically as well.
And here's what my concern is. In Texas, a very strong private property rights state. I have a piece of property, I want to put this on it. Who are you to say I can't do it?
Right.
Meanwhile, I think the community would feel very strongly against at least, well, both of these. One for water use and one for fire safety. And a future councilman say, this is the best idea we've ever seen. But I don't think I would be part of that council.
Right.
And I want to give that future council the ability to say no, with real reasons why to say no. And largely, and right now, it's a power use, water use, and fire safety.
Right.
Is fire safety mentioned in any of these for the BESS units?
Not specifically in the zoning code, because the fire code does have other requirements. I've seen some examples of a setback on the property as well. So the property must be a certain number of feet away from other uses, and then an additional setback on the property, from the property line to help mitigate some of the fire and other environmental concerns.
We all have lithium batteries with us today,
Right.
right? But when a electric vehicle catches on fire, I think the protocol now is just to let it burn itself out.
Right.
And if it's within the city limits and it's endangering people with the smoke and gases that exhaust, there's another protocol. But if it's out away from people, the protocol is just let it burn till it's gone,
Right.
okay? Fire safety has to be a part of this too. I know that's in the fire code, but we can't have that in the conditional use. We can't have that in chapter 60.
We could replicate some of that. I breezed through another study that talked about the fire side. They were actually testing the separation between each BESS unit, so that if one did catch fire, are the other ones far enough away that it doesn't create a domino effect? We can look at that in more detail and see if that's a good requirement to separate them, each unit, so far away from one another to augment the fire code.
Well, one of the nightmare scenarios they give the mayor of Kerrville, Texas, is a electric vehicle or electric truck going down I-10 carrying hazardous materials, catching fire, okay? What's the plan?
Right.
Well, this BESS is basically dangerous. Now, not as dangerous as a gas plant, not as dangerous as other plants, but we don't have the technology to put one of those things out, in my opinion. I'd have to confer with Chief Maloney, but I think he was at the same meeting I was at.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I'll
Any
go back to
questions or
that.
comments?
I'll go back to that additional study and see if there's some recommendations on internal setbacks between units, and we can add that to this as well.
And this technology may change, you know, it may become
Right.
safer and may not use as much water, and I get it. At the same time, I want future councils to be able to say. Any comments or questions?
I was just gonna say, the fire bothers me more than anything, and you know how windy it is here all the time? I mean, where could you put it where it would not possibly harm someone just because of our conditions, our weather conditions with wind and things? So, anyway, I'm not comfortable with them myself. I mean, it's kind of one of those, maybe way, way, way in another state, but.
Well, the data centers are way too big. We don't have a place in the city limits, do we? I mean, because they take a lot of space.
Not that I can think of, not at the scale that you're seeing them go in
So, I
across
mean,
the state and the
I
country.
really see that. I suppose the battery, the best systems are not so, you know, land hungry as the data centers.
Right.
I don't, still don't have a lot. I can't imagine a lot of places where it would be appropriate to put them. I mean, I haven't really looked at the map and see, you know, where's some fringe places, but, I can't imagine we need one in the city. I mean, got a whole big county. City is not that big.
Well, I'm curious. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jeff.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
No, go.
I'm gonna look over here for something, but the great thing about our government that we have is future council could come in and change what we decide to do on this at any time. Drew, is that correct? Is there anything that says we can just put in the chapter 60 that says no, period, the end? You're not gonna do that in our town?
To outright prohibit them?
Yes. And if future council wanted to come back and be, oh, that's the greatest thing on earth.
Right.
Let's overturn what this council did. Because if not, I don't wanna see prohibited within 100 feet or 1,000 feet of the lake or 300 feet from the following. I'm gonna put restrictions on that are so high that it's gonna force them not to be here. At least that's my vote. That's what I would do. You can't be within 5,280 feet of any residential zoned area.
Right.
You can't be within a mile of any of it. I'd probably say 2 miles. So is there anything that says we couldn't just prohibit it totally where you don't have that option to do that in our town?
Councilmember Harris, real quick. William and I were kind of just talking about that, you know, and putting a moratorium on there. I mean, y'all technically could. I think we're seeing a lot of cities, and William and I both agree that we're seeing a lot of cities are trying to do regulations and do ordinances on that to prevent the state from coming in and basically saying, no, you can't do anything, and it becomes an unregulated market. And so by using the codes and the ordinances to really just make it very challenging, using the train, using, you know, the zoning, using, you know, our regulations and what we have here in the community, it's reasonable and ideally trying to keep the state out of local government affairs or local affairs. So if cities start putting moratoriums on it across the board, it does run the risk where the state would get involved on the private property rights and limit or preempt cities from even regulating these at all.
Just make it so stringent.
That should be the protection that we're really looking for.
Mhm.
Do enough of that, enough of the setback.
I don't think we could talk to a single person that lives in
Yeah.
Kerrville or Kerr County that wants one of these things. anywhere near any of
Right.
it.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say, was, until we know how these things are gonna impact water usage and fire risk, we need to, who sets these numbers up? 100 feet from the 100-year floodplain, and why can't we add like 3 zeros onto that? And prohibited within 300 feet of the following. Where did that number come from, that 300 feet?
So
Why
that
can't-
was more or less the average that I've seen across the state.
Okay,
Like I
so,
said, somewhere as low as 200. Obviously, I didn't think that was going to be
okay. Yeah,
comparable.
because if it were left to me, which it's not, that's why y'all are sitting here. But I would do everything possible to make it impossible for them to build within the city limits.
Never had a great point. If an electric truck catches on fire and you're within 300 feet of a public or private school or a hospital, Councilmember Seigerman said, as windy as it is here,
You're talking about evacuations and all
that
kinds of
and the
stuff.
fumes
Yep.
and it's just,
Yeah.
it's plus the unneeded risk that we put our first responders in to, because Chief, you're gonna have your officers responding for traffic control. Chief Maloney and his team are gonna have their officers out there scratching their heads trying to figure out how to put these things out. I know you can blanket it or whatever, but let it burn. You can't let it burn next to a school.
Right.
So,
Well, psychologically, rather than just saying no, maybe that's the thing to do, is to make it not, very unpractical for anyone to want to pursue it, and they go find another place.
Yeah, I think the largest setback I saw was either 1,000 or 1,500 feet from residential uses. Again, playground, school, hospital. One other thing that I thought about was, instead of just looking at residentially zoned property, include existing residential use. So that's a non-conforming residential or even county property. We don't typically regulate by zoning adjacent to city limits, a separation from residential uses in the county. But knowing it's obviously a county issue as well, we could look at that.
Real quick, and Drew, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm definitely not a planning guru, but just thinking about why these numbers are all over the place from all the research that Drew's done, is more than likely they're taking simple approaches and they're taking some of their key infrastructures, key residential areas, putting rings around it and figuring out where these things are gonna find the blind spots and how to cover all the blind spots within their communities to prevent it. And that's likely what they're doing, and why we're seeing those all over the place, is because of that.
Could we just make it easy, make a setback of not within 300 feet of the ETJ?
Even just looking at, thinking about these numbers, thinking about all of our stuff, a lot of these setbacks are pretty unbearable, or unattainable. We could probably do some of this as well and kind of see if there's any blind spots that we may be missing, and we can come back to y'all. But I'd be willing to bet that this is pretty unattainable for the size of these facilities, especially within the city limits of Kerrville.
You're talking about this one in and of itself?
Like the ordinance presented today, we can confirm it, but I bet there's probably not a lot of blind spots in there. Pretty unattainable, especially for the size of these facilities, but we can confirm that.
Yeah, I'd still like to increase it.
I remember the rings, as we referred to them
Right.
during the STR stuff, on planning and zoning and council.
Yep.
And the way that y'all looked at everything, 200 foot, 300, 500
Right.
feet. That would probably be the city manager Rice's point. See if they overlap with anything, and that could be the one that is the deciding factor that says, oh, none of this qualifies within the city limits. That, anyway, but I'm a hard no on any of them being here. But however, we have to do that to make sure.
Any
I
other
will look
comments
at
on
that.
this before we move on? Right, thank you, Mr. Paxton. Item 2E, preliminary budget information. Ms. Barron?
Yeah, well,
Right there.
got a few more.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Sorry.
I bet we get to talk about parking.
Parking ratios.
I'm just looking at the clock and realizing we have a time problem. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Again, we talked about the combination of uses for multi-tenant structures. Again, I'll try to get through this pretty quickly. We've
You're
covered
good.
some of it.
I didn't mean to put pressure on.
No, you're fine. Institute of Transportation Engineers shows that parking demand is typically overestimated by 25 to 30% for auto-dependent suburban areas, much like ours. The Urban Land Institute, through their studies, have shown that parking can be reduced 20 to 40% for multi-tenant shared parking scenarios. The excess parking creates an increased stormwater infrastructure need, reduces taxable building area, drives up the development costs, and creates long-term underutilized pavement. The parking demand decrease is probably due to a lot of e-commerce these days, remote hybrid work lowering office capacity or office occupancy, and delivery apps reducing some of the dine-in parking or peak hours that we're seeing in restaurants. You asked for a few examples, so I'll run through these relatively quickly. The River Oaks Shopping Center is about 121,000 square feet. They currently have 434 parking spaces. If we reduced that to the recommended 1 to 300, they would be required 404 spaces. And went and took pictures yesterday, so I knew we had current pictures. This is between 2 and 3 o'clock yesterday. As you can see, that parking lot is largely
Pretty
empty.
empty.
1305 Sidney Bakers, this is Tractor Supply, Specs, Golden Antler, that shopping center. 111,000 square feet, they currently have 462 parking spaces. At 1 to 300, they would be required 371. You can tell by the aerial. I don't know what day the aerial was taken. So again, that's why I went and took a look firsthand. So that was around 2 o'clock yesterday. You can see this parking lot is less than half full. 1304 Junction Highway, this is the one that we referenced that had a future pad site planned. You can see the highlighted area in blue. There's about 91 spaces in that parking area that are largely unused. There's the main shopping center yesterday, about half full. That front row's about half full. The row behind it was 2 or 3 cars. And there's the actual pad site. There's about 4 cars in the middle, and Culver's does have an easement for that first row of parking that their employees use. So those are pretty consistent on that side. The owner that's looking to put in the pad site ran some calculations based on that square footage. The proposed total square footage would be 36,000 and would require 137 spaces. If we just went to 101 space for every 300 square feet, it'd be required 122 spaces. So that would allow that pad site to be developed. Live Oak Plaza, service and some retail, 34,000 square feet, currently 127 spaces. The new requirements would only require 115. And that was that parking lot yesterday. It's very interesting trying to photograph that one with the topography. This one's it's actually 2 separate parcels, but I thought it'd be a good smaller scale one to look at. You have the shopping center at 1201 and Cane's Restaurant at 1205 Junction Highway. Collectively, they're just under 10,000 square feet with current 69 parking spaces. At 1 to 250 parking spaces, they would be required 40 parking spaces. Obviously, the aerial's pretty slim. Drove by yesterday. The dental office had 5 or 6 cars. Obviously, the dry cleaner is mostly employees, and then their drive-through. Cane's had 3 or 4 parking, and you can see a few cars in the drive lane. Some of the Cane's employees do park in that lower parking lot that you see down below. But there were, I think, 3 cars parked there yesterday afternoon. 704 Junction Highway, this is one where Jersey Mike's is currently located. 7,500 square feet, 48 parking spaces. At 1 to 250, they would be required 30 parking spaces. And they also came to city council to purchase the additional right-of-way, that dirt section next to their parking lot. They've actually purchased land to expand their parking if they ever needed to. But as you can see, with mostly, there's one tenant in that building now, so very limited parking. And then 207 Sidney Baker, this is Happy State Bank and Subway right across the river from us. Currently have 45 parking spaces. They'd only be required 23 parking spaces. And then yesterday, again, the parking lot was maybe a quarter full at that point at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So this was the original proposal, multi-tenant, one space for every 250 square feet. Over 2,000, reduce that to one space for every 300 square feet. And as we looked at the scale of these properties, as we got to those smaller properties, you saw you're losing more and more spaces. So it makes council feel more comfortable with future developments. Oh, that's too far. Looked at a secondary option, breaking out into 3 separate tiers. So up to 10,000 square feet would stay at 1 to 200, 10,000 to 30,000, 1 to 250, and over 30,000, 1 to 300. Also reached out to the owner of the mall, Culpeper Realty, and they've shown pretty consistently across the state and the country for obviously mall scale, larger shopping centers, 1 to 300 is fairly average for properties that size. Your smaller shopping centers at 1 to 250 is fairly consistent in their retail world, either by regulation of city or by the actual corporate retailers themselves. Any questions?
Questions?
No, I recognize all the pictures, and you're right. I was just at Bath and Body Works Saturday,
Mhm.
and I noticed that vacant piece of land there, and I remember thinking, nobody's parked there, I mean, there's not a need, there's plenty of parking. So, anyway, I like this idea myself.
Is council more comfortable with the 2-tiered numbers or the 3-tiered numbers?
I like the 2-tier, but also I like to, and I can do this on my own or whatever. I like to see these parking lots on Saturdays and
Right.
Sundays. You know, when people are off work, cause, you know,
Yeah.
2 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. Now, I will tell you, over there, across the street from the old city hall, way back in the day where, Saki and all that is.
Mhm.
They have too many parking spots.
Right.
In my opinion. But other ones, like where, across the street from the stadium.
Mhm.
Well, let's look at that place come September, October on a Friday night.
Right.
It's not all tenants parking there, it's football
Right.
overflow. So you might have to kind of look at some of the mitigating factors of other parking spots as well. But I like the 2-tier that you have because I think it would fit better with some of what we have right now, too many spots, and a little bit of, well, we have one tenant and the parking lot's full. What happens when we get 2 more tenants in this building?
Right.
So,
I'm glad to know that about Jersey Mike's, because I get around. I was over there also Saturday too. And I remember thinking, when these 2 vacant spaces get filled, where are they gonna
Right.
park? They're gonna be parking in the gas station parking lot. Anyway, thank you. I like the 2-tier also.
Comments, guys?
Seems like this may even be too many with the pictures we're looking at. I mean,
Right.
these parking lots are pretty darn empty.
Yeah, there's,
And you're reducing them, but not that much.
right. Certainly not suggesting it, but there are now several cities, more your metro areas, that are putting parking maximums on retail sites instead. So they're putting a maximum of 1 to 250. So even if the corporate retailers say they need a certain number of spaces, they're recognizing that need. Because multi-tenant shared parking, the biggest part of that is they don't peak at the same time. So a good landlord should not pick multiple tenants that peak at the same time, so you have that balance.
Yeah, but they like the cash flow.
That's true.
Exactly.
Does the, gross floor area, you say that it excludes restrooms, office, and storage space? Is
For-
it that way for restaurants as well?
It is not. That
It
is,
is not.
currently it is just for retail.
Okay. Yeah, I like the two-tiered system, but I also agree with Jeff in that, our Councilmember Harris, that, the time of day that these pictures were taken is 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and, at 10 o'clock in the morning or at lunchtime, I see those, every one of those parking spaces or those areas full of cars. So I don't know whether this really is beneficial or not. Because 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, most people are at work and they're not in shopping centers or, at Tractor Supply or Lowe's. We do all that at night or on our lunch hour.
So like Friday nights we'll go to Saki and have dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And that parking lot between Saki, El Bracero,
Yeah.
Dickey's Barbecue, it's pretty full.
Yeah.
In those areas, in those sections. In the front section, those businesses are closed.
Right.
At that time. So the front's empty, but the back's full and vice versa during the day because, anyway, it's, I guess, 6 o'clock.
Other comments or questions?
Two-tier looks good to me.
Well, and why the difference between retail and restaurants?
Most of your restaurants have a pretty consistent model of public space versus backspace for their operations. And so it's just based on a total square footage, based on a peak for lunch or dinner time frame. Most cities still have a 1:100 parking ratio for restaurants. I've seen some reduced down to one space to 150, which I think you said Kerrville's used to be 1:150. But that's pretty consistent for right around there for most restaurants.
Yeah, because their parking lots are empty from 2 to 3 o'clock as well.
Absolutely.
You can also look at retail with their storage areas.
Right.
I was in your restaurant when y'all had it, and the front side is all the stuff, but in the back was your center. I mean, your cook back there and everything else. Well, let's look at Academy and how they're going to build that because they're going to have a storeroom. They're going to have a
Yeah,
place for all their inventory. So
Right.
yeah, so, my concern is using all the area at restaurants, but excluding restrooms, office, and storage in retail, because it's the same.
Right.
Storage space, and the kitchen and the restroom and the office and all of that, I don't think it should count in the building area. I think it should be restricted to dining area only, because that's where the public's gonna be.
I think the storage and the office space and restaurants are probably a fairly consistent percentage of the building. It's not like somebody's got a really big office and
Mhm.
a really big storage area and you don't want to count it. I mean, the ratio would be pretty much the same. And if it's a pretty standard around and it works in all these other cities, I don't know why we have to then decide, well, how much dining area do they have? Whatever. I think the ratio is not very much.
Yeah, and that's been in the code since 2019.
Mhm.
like I said, the previous code, I think you're right, it was 1 to 150 for restaurants. As we went through the zoning code update in 2019, I think that's when the consultants recommended the retail look at public space only. Because so many of your newer retailers have smaller storage spaces just for receiving. They don't keep a back stock anymore. All stock is on the floor for most of your retailers these days. So it just reduces the amount, a little bit of floor space for just a shipping or receiving area, because you don't have that back stock like you used to.
Are you hearing consensus from us, Mr. Paxton?
Yes, sir.
Any other comments? All right, I'm sorry I cut you off earlier.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2E, budget information, Ms. Behrens.
Best for last.
Mayor, if it pleases council, we're kind of cutting on time, and we definitely want to talk about the next item in executive session if possible. We have a financial update that we can do at council. We can add this to it. It's only about 10 minutes because we want to get y'all some of the preliminary budget, or we can add this to the workshop in May, whatever pleases council the most.
What do y'all want to do?
It could be your call, you're the mayor.
Get the big bucks,
Why don't
buddy.
we do it at the council meeting?
I like that.
Okay.
I'm fine with you, if that's okay with y'all.
Yes.
Is that okay, Julie?
That's fine.
Okay.
You can have it updated by then, see?
You want me to change it again before then? Okay. I'll work on it.
All
Thank you,
right.
Mayor, council.
All right, so we have an item for discussion in executive session. So we'll need a motion to go into executive session. Is there a motion then?
I move we go to an executive session under, section 551-072.
A second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and
The second.
No, that's all right.
seconded. All in favor, so vote, and it's unanimous. So we'll go upstairs, right? We're upstairs? Executive session, we took no action during executive session, so I'm going to go ahead and adjourn our workshop at 6:10 PM.